October 29th. We are just 5 days away from the end of voting in the most important election of our lives. This is it, 5 days. It's really about 4 days and a few hours, to be blunt. That's where we stand right now. Stay angry. We are so close to this finish line. The polls are looking excellent in a lot of key states, but they're still close. Let's not play games. This is not a done deal. It could go either way. You have to know that. And despite the Supreme Court ruling last night, which allowed receiving absentee ballots in Pennsylvania and North Carolina days after Election Day, as long as they're postmarked on Election Day, don't count on it. As I've said before, if you give Trump and the GOP a chance to cheat, they will cheat. So don't give them that chance. What do? You've got to return it. If you haven't mailed it already, you got to return it in person if you can. Most states allow you to return it in person or designate someone. Some states like Tennessee do not. You have to go by mail or you have to go vote in person. You've got to figure that out right now. If it's too late to send your ballot back, if you can make a plan to vote safely, do that. Every vote counts. I'm not kidding you. If you live in one of the battleground states, it's going to be close. It's looking good, but it's going to be close. There is no doubt about it. We can see the finish line. It's right in front of us. We are so close to defeating this monster, Donald Trump. I've said this time and time again. Defeating Trump is the challenge of this generation. But it's not a generation defined by age. It's one defined by values. If you believe in what this country represents at its best, at its most aspirational, then you've got to defeat Trumpism. Trumpism is a celebration of cruelty and divisiveness, of white supremacy, of sexism, of anti-Muslim bigotry, anti-LGBT policies, and the list goes on. It is truly vile. To have 4 more years of this will fundamentally change this country for generations. That's the reality. So what's Trump's closing argument? Well, it was ignore COVID, but actually he was saying subtly, I've conquered COVID, kept saying we've rounded the turn. And his new argument that he began today is the economy is back. He has made the economy great again. I know what you're thinking. Out of your mind? Yes, he is. What happened is today the gross domestic product, GDP numbers came out for last quarter, measuring July to September. And they were a historic jump from the quarter before. So he's out there and he's tweeting things like GDP just announced biggest and best in history. And his campaign's tweeting out President Trump making our economy great again. He's bragging about it at his rallies. Let's be blunt here. Trump's claims about the economy are no different than his claims about COVID. They are at best an exaggeration, but more likely they're just lies. And what they have in common, they're lies to help him. Trump cares about no one but Donald J. Trump. We all know that. So his new lies in the economy are about that very thing. It doesn't matter that only about 35% of Americans think the economy is good, and over 60% think it's not good. He's still going to lie. He's just telling his supporters it's great. And some of his supporters who are even struggling economically, sadly enough, will go with him and say, yeah, oh, it is great. My life's better. It's not. Let's look at some of the numbers, folks. Our economy is not even close to where it was pre-COVID. We have millions of Americans still out of work who used to have a job in March. Millions and millions. There's over 150,000 small businesses now closed that were open in March. You've got layoffs now on a permanent basis that are creeping up. You've got Trump, and the worst part of this, Trump's got no plan to create new jobs because he's in denial. Just like with COVID, he's in denial. It's lie and deny over and over and over. The GDP, by the way, which just measures our economic output as a nation, there's 4 components, but the main thing is it measures how much we've produced, our services, what we've in this 3-month period. It's quarterly. Remember this, the reason it's an historic jump from the quarter before was the quarter before was horrific. That was the worst quarter of economic downturn and depression we've ever seen in the history of our nation in 3 months. So of course we're now up 30% because we were down 30% the quarter before. That's the reality. But here's the most fundamental part of this. The GDP numbers we got today, they are backwards looking, like Trump. They look backwards. They are from July to September. We're at the end of October. Look where we are now, because the growth is primarily from July and August. September began slowing down. October is even worse. What's going on? Let me read you some numbers. First of all, because COVID cases have gone up, our economy is going to unfortunately slow because our economy, Trump doesn't get this, is tied to COVID. The more control we have over COVID, the more our economy can flourish. Trump is saying today at a rally in Florida, blue state governors are closing their states down. That's a lie. Every state is open to a certain degree. I live in New York City. We have even restaurants open, but at 25%. Red states like Idaho, which have an explosion of new cases, 2 days ago, their Republican governor has now imposed more closures. Governors are not keeping states closed to hurt Trump. That's Trump derangement syndrome to believe that. They're closing things to save lives. That's the reality. But here are some of the numbers Trump won't talk about. Trump's own Department of Labor today told us, and you're not going to believe this, you know how many Americans are still collecting some form of unemployment? 22.7 million. 22.7 million. Now, all of them are not completely unemployed. Some are part-time. Another stunning number. Today, we found out, like every week, how many first-time unemployment claims we have. We learned today 751,000 Americans filed these are new claims in the last week for unemployment. These are recent layoffs because every week we get new numbers. To give you some perspective, pre-COVID, on average, 200,000 Americans filed for unemployment. We are now at 4 times that, and we're stuck at that number. For the last 4 weeks, our average of new unemployment claims per week, this is per week, are 785,000. 785,000. That's 4 times pre-COVID. But Trump is trying to say the economy's back. It's not even close to back. There is so much pain going on. Here's some more we learned today, because every week we get the numbers. Applications for the federal unemployment program, they went up. 360,000 new claims. That's up from the week before. Meaning the last week, we now have 1.1 million Americans, over 1 million Americans filed for state and federal unemployment. This is not a good situation. And it's darker for those who were unemployed since March. Their unemployment benefits, even with extensions, have now expired. We have a surge in long-term unemployment. And this comes right from the Trump administration's own Department of Labor numbers. This is not me spinning it. I'm telling you what they're telling us. We have now people every week, a growing number of Americans who are unemployed long-term have exhausted their state unemployment benefits. Meaning, if they have no money in the bank, and few do because they've already burned through it, they're not going to be able to pay their rent, their mortgage, their car payments. They won't be able to put food on their table for their children, but Trump doesn't care. These are an inconvenient truth. Just like our fellow Americans, over 1,100 died yesterday. Trump doesn't care. He doesn't mention them. He doesn't care that Americans are dying. He doesn't care that children are going to bed hungry. That's the monster in the White House who's devoid of any humanity whatsoever. Some of the other numbers we found out, according to Yelp, which does a great study, I know it's an online app, but because of that, they can actually quantify and give updates almost every few months on small businesses. Do you know how many small businesses have now closed? This is a new study that they just updated a few weeks ago. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the exact number they found, 163,000 small businesses are closed. Primarily restaurants, you've got nightclubs, retail, gone. You can't go back to your job if your job's not there. But Trump doesn't care. Because if he cared, he'd have a job creation program. You know who does have a job creation program? Joe Biden. It's called Build Back Better. And it's multifaceted, plan to create millions of jobs in various areas, from dealing with climate change to other domestic jobs in manufacturing and healthcare. And while his proposals might not create all the millions of jobs that he projects, he at least understands you need the federal government to play a role. You can't create millions of jobs in a recession that's going to be with us long term. That's the Congressional Research Service, nonpartisan, has told us this. This is long term. This is not a short term thing. If you've got your job back, you're lucky. But with the uptick in COVID cases, look what we're seeing in Europe, Germany and France closing down. Sadly, in America, we will likely see certain states closing down and more layoffs again. And you had layoffs that are permanent. In the last few weeks, Disney let go 28,000 people. United and American Airlines laid off 31,000. Just days ago, Boeing laid off 7,000. This is not short term. These are permanent layoffs until the economy turns around, which will not happen until we get a vaccine. And we live in the real world. The vaccine's not coming to the middle of next year if we are lucky for mass distribution. So I don't think anyone's surprised that Donald Trump is lying now about the economy just like he does about COVID. Donald Trump's plans for both are just the idea of all tweets, no substance. That's Trump. All tweets, no substance. The same lies with COVID, same lies the economy. Trump doesn't care about Americans dying. He doesn't care about Americans who can't pay their bills or can't feed their children. Donald Trump cares about one person, Donald J. Trump. The rest of us are expendable people. We're expendable props in the Trump world. We've got 5 days to end this. 5 days. Vote like your health and your life depends on it. And even if your health is good, think of other Americans. As Democrats, I think what really defines us is that we care about people we've never met. We care about people we will never meet. That's who we are as Democrats. We are not selfish. Our orbit of care goes beyond our immediate family. Think about those Americans across this country, and disproportionately it's affecting people of color and poor people. Poor people are suffering. Trump doesn't care about them. We have to care. We need a president who's going to have an economic plan that's going to take care of people from the streets all the way up to the suites. We can't be just for the wealthy. The wealthy have made more money in the time of COVID. It's all documented. So tonight on my show, I'll talk about this even more. I've got a great lineup on my show. We've got Karine Jean-Pierre, Kamala Harris's chief of staff, Maria Teresa Kumar from Voto Latino, and Never Trumper, Anthony Scaramucci. So my show is live 6 to 9 p.m. on SiriusXM channel 127. And if you don't subscribe, go to the website. Free trials right there. Check it out. Listen to my show, but call. Be a part of our conversation. Be a part of our family. Be a part of this generation that is dedicated to doing one thing, defeating Trump and having American values defeat Trumpism. Thanks for tuning in.